Hi, welcome to the New Voting Project. My name is Kunal, your host, and today we're here with a very special guest from Alameda County, Mr. Brendon Woods, who is an American criminal defense attorney and an advocate for criminal justice reform here in Alameda County. You're currently the public defender of my county, and yes, I'm still entitled to all my rights apparently. Um, and you served as the
I can't comment. I don't know. I don't.
Oh,
Maybe.
you don't know? Okay, well, as far as I know, I think I am. And you actually served as the president of the California Public Defenders Association. And so thank you so much for taking the time to come out, be on the show. I understand you're very busy prosecuting and whatnot, but I do appreciate it.
What was it? Back up. You said prosecuting. You mean defending, right?
Yes, defending. Sorry, yeah, too much jargon for lawyers. But I do want to ask and just start by asking a little bit about your background, how you got into to the space of law, and being an attorney, and touch on your college education. Obviously, you had to go to law school. That experience.
Yeah. So I guess my background. I guess I was born in New York. My background, Jamaica, Queens. Yeah, I was the first person on my mom's side of the family born in the States. We're from Jamaica, Kingston, Jamaica.
Wow.
So my mom came over. She was very young. Um, she was a kid. She had me. She was very young. She was like 16, 17. My biological father wasn't really around. Had kind of a different upbringing. And I guess maybe what got me into this line of work for me was what I saw growing up, what I saw happening to my family, my cousins, my uncle, what I saw happening in my community, and just seeing the way this quote unquote justice system operated, seeing the way police treated members of my community. I figured if I was going to get through high school, get through college, get through law school, this is the work I was going to do. I was going to fight for people who look like me,
Mhm.
be that voice for them in the courtroom, make sure their voices stay amplified, and really fight to keep people out of cages. That's what we do as public defense. We fight against that system of mass incarceration. So that's kind of why I do the work. I've been doing it for about 25 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I graduated law school in '96. I started here in Alameda County as a post-bar clerk back then, and I've been here ever since. So yeah, I love the job, love the work. We can talk about that more. I think college, gosh. So early on in my career, my mom, actually, when she was younger, she joined the military. And that kind of got us on our little upward trajectory financially, got us out from where we were. And I always thought I was going to join the military also. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go to the Naval Academy. My stepfather went there. I'm going to do this stuff. And then that ended up just not being my route. I went to actually visit Naval Academy and I saw it. I'm like, I'm not sure about this. and then
Yeah.
and then in contrast, I visited UC Santa Barbara. I'm like, oh yeah, this more
Yeah.
it's more my
I,
speed.
yeah. I would have to agree. I think I like the contrast better over here.
But even still, at Santa Barbara, I thought I might end up joining the military after I was done there. And then the Gulf War happened, and I really had to think about if we were a nation going to war, um, and my beliefs conflicted with that. Would I be able to do that work? And then really at Santa Barbara, I began to explore more Black Studies classes. I took a phenomenal Black Radicals class. I took a lot of political science classes, and this my of all places, Santa Barbara, my social conscience began to expand more,
Yeah.
um, and I realized that there was just more that I could do to fight for my people, and that's what I want. That's when I started on the law school path, and I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer early on, but this wasn't a possibility. Like the only route I saw was military, but then in college I began to figure it out and started to click a little bit more, and so here I am.
Yeah, here you are, and I think we could all say, at least for me, I think you're doing a wonderful job. And I kind of want to touch upon. There's many facets to politics I see, right? There's a lot of ways to change a corrupt system. There's advocacy. You took the legal route, and so I specifically want to ask why pursue law of all things when you're looking to endeavor to change, right? And the law, of course, it's interesting. It's difficult. It's hard to remember for me. Do explain why you chose law.
So for me, the draw of law for me was public defense.
Okay.
I didn't. go to law school to do any other type of work. Maybe civil rights litigation, but it's
Mhm.
really all about public defense. It's all about being with someone in court, fighting against the government, fighting for that person. It's about fighting to keep that system from convicting people, fighting from keeping that system from caging black and brown people, which is what it does, like in mass. So that's what it was really about for me. Lots of parts of law school I hated. I hated like
Right.
contracts, wills and trusts, corporations, all those classes. I hated them. I didn't want to be there for them. Um, I just went to law school to be a public defender. And I figured, at least for me, that was the way I could have a real impact and change on an individual person basis, like one on one. I'm going to fight for that individual. And then the more I did it, the more I realized I could have a bigger impact um, in politics, maybe in laws, and figuring out how the system operates and how to fix it for the most part.
Right. And I guess what have you learned so far? You've been at the public defender's office for 25 years.
I haven't learned anything. I don't know anything, man.
Oh, you don't know anything.
I
And
learned a couple of things, but go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, you've been there for what, 25 years.
Yeah.
What have you seen? What are the war stories? What are the policies you've focused on? Right? Because you're a proponent of criminal justice reform. So I imagine, it's been an interesting ride so far.
It has been. And to think about the ride, I started here in 90 as I started having cases in 98 as a associate deputy public defender. And thinking about where we were in 98 to where we are now, there's been some significant changes and movements. So I think about when I first started, it was still the 90s. It was still kind of the tail end of the crack epidemic. It was still the war on drugs, and people were going to prison at a clip for possession or selling drugs. It was not uncommon. If you had a drug sale and you were on probation for drug sale, it was no questions asked. You were going to prison. It was like fighting against that and seeing how further we've come, where we are not sending people to prison for addiction generally, not sending people to prison for drug sales. We've now legalized marijuana. So we've come a long ways in reforms to a certain extent. We still have a long way to go. Um, the system is still inherently racist. The system is still inherently flawed. The system is still ran by economics and money. The system still has the underpinnings of white supremacy. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done still.
Mhm.
But compared to where we were when I first started, there's definitely been some progress and movement. Um, just thinking about how the three strike laws have changed, there's been lots of changes. So
Yeah, no, and I'm glad. And what do you think, from your perspective, are some of the ways to go about solving those issues? Right, you had mentioned of racism embedded within the criminal justice system, white supremacy, obviously corporate influence. Right, these are all things that I'm sure impact the court. And what can we do? You do as a public defender, and we do as students, as the next class, to kind of help the situation and strive for that change.
you should all become public defenders.
Oh, yeah, well, that's great career advice.
That's my advice. All become public defenders. All come work here in this office. Um, God, there's so much. And you mentioned law. I think laws is a great avenue, whether you do public defense or something else. Got to think about, we have immigration attorneys in our office right now, and they do amazing work um, filing really creative federal legal briefs, representing people in removal proceedings, immigration court. They do some really fantastic work. Um, if I had my way, I'd have housing lawyers in our office too. There's so many ways you can use the law to impact people's lives, and so many ways you can use the law or fight in legal arenas where you're fighting racism and poverty. I think that's a big part of what we do as public defenders. We're doing it from the criminal legal side, but there's ways to do it in housing, employment, immigration. There's so many other ways you can have that impact. Um, from my view, I think public defenders have a particular access into what occurs in the courtroom, what happens in our jails, and what happens in regards to the way this legal system is so just flawed and corrupt. So using that to create some sort of political momentum to change laws is kind of where we're at now. using that in collaboration with community orgs who've been doing great work for a long time, um, amplifying the voices of our clients and their experiences to get politicians to listen and create new laws. That's kind of where we're going right now. And you have a particular insight to see how we could make things better. So, for example, I think about bail reform. That was very big and a hot topic the last couple of years, and it was through client voices
Right.
that made it have an impact and made it real for people. You know, we've been talking about it forever, but when like Khalif Browder happened, that was like, okay, people are listening now. And then being able to push legislation on, okay, people are listening now. And this highlighting the fact that the system treats people differently based on the amount of money they have, um, based on you could be a really dangerous individual, okay, and have a ton of money and you'll be out on bail, right?
Correct.
Be someone who was not dangerous at all, but you're poor and black or brown and you're in custody. Um,
Because you can't afford it.
right, because you can't afford bail.
Yeah.
And the way that actually impacts the legal system, that person who is in custody because they can't afford to buy their way out, buy their freedom, most likely will take a plea bargain because of it, right? And you see how the system works. They don't get a chance at a trial because they want to get out of jail. So
Yeah. No, and that makes sense. And I kind of want to outline what is the relationship that is between the public defender's office and the DA. Like, like what are the distinctions that these two powerhouses have within the legal system? Because they're obviously both very important posts. And we were talking about a district attorney race, and how it's very important for the county criminal justice system.
yeah. So if I look at it at traditionally the way it's set up, right, the prosecutor prosecutes and incarcerates. That's what they do,
Right.
and the public defense. That's the normal way it's set up. I think both sides have kind of expanded more. You
Yeah.
have on the one side that's more recent, this progressive prosecuting movement where people are seeing alternate solutions to incarceration. They're trying to do something different. They're trying to bring a more sense of something just to the criminal legal system. Notice I call it criminal legal system. They're trying to bring some justice there. And then on the public defender side, I think we've always been fighting, but we're being more aggressive with regards to the way we fight. And also, while we do that, being more involved in community and bringing this whole aspect of holistic defense, which really originated out of New York, the Bronx defenders, where you're trying to attack this system that's based and rooted in white supremacy, based and rooted in poverty, and trying to provide as many services as possible for your clients, whether it be social workers, clean slate, immigration, client advocates, trying to really uplift the client out of the situation that they're in.
Yeah. No, and I just want to highlight that distinction is necessary. In fact, I think there's a certain amount of synergy I see right now with the progressive prosecuting movement in the DA side and this new outlook that public defenders have. And those two offices working together to ensure that certain communities aren't being mistreated compared to others is, I think, the most valuable part. And I guess I want to make a complete non sequitur, and now let's talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, which is voting. And we were discussing, voting in the next election prior to this, but I want to ask you, being a public defender, having a lot of recognition about the law. What did you learn? What did you understand about this past election we underwent in 2020? Like, as not only a community advocate, but just as a voting and law abiding citizen, what were your thoughts on the year 2020?
I think that 2020, of course, was in my mind, the anti-Trump year, the kind of almost a redemption year, if you're talking about that level,
Uh-huh.
uh, where so I remember um, 2016 very well.
Right. I think
Uh,
we all do.
yeah,
I was,
but
yeah,
that was that was heavy. That there's no that was heavy. That was depressing. I have two young daughters. They're biracial, And their response was at the time they're a lot younger. I was like, "Why does America hate us?" was their response to that election, um, and that was heavy. So I think this election was a response to that. I am lefty left. I I prefer more left candidates, but I'm we're in a better place than we were a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
The thing is though, it also showed that, as we all know, we're a country that's still really, really divided, and the divisions feel like they're more entrenched than ever. Uh, I can't recall a number off the top of my head, but it was a shockingly high number of Americans still voted for Trump. Um,
Yes.
that,
Yes.
that, and that's a little frightening.
Yeah. 75 million, like
Yeah.
up in that range. 76 million
And, and
Americans.
that's to me that's concerning. Okay.
Right. Which is why I find very difficult to even fathom this idea of voting rights restrictions, right? Things we've been seeing since Civil War era, Reconstruction. I mean, it's not the best that we're circling back in time, because if I was an advocate of either party, right,
Yeah.
of either party, I would want more people to vote regardless, so that I would have a higher chance of winning an election, right? 76 million people and 80 million for Joe Biden, that's almost 150 million people, like more than 150 million, half of America's population voting in an election. That to me by itself is historic, regardless of the election results.
Right.
So the dynamic now is that a certain white majority, right? You and I could agree, is targeting minority communities, marginalized communities, impoverished communities, and removing their inherent civil rights as citizens, as voters. And I mean, I don't like going backwards. You know, as historians we say the pendulum always switches. I don't like that.
But that's the playbook, right? That
Yeah,
was the playbook. It was the playbook. The slogan was "Make America Great Again," right? I
yeah,
mean, make America racist again, make America white again. I mean, we can put all those phrases there. The whole playbook was to go back in time, and now they're trying to do that. They're trying to um, bring things back, and I'm actually really concerned. Think about today. Roe versus Wade was being argued in front of the Supreme Court today. I mean, it was like, and we talk about the power of voting. Um, the the Supreme Court is the way it is right now because of freaking Donald Trump. I mean, really, and we're going to see. I do believe that his biggest impact, probably for generations, is going to be the judicial nominations, right? The Supreme Court, the federal nominations,
yeah,
the lifetime nominations he's made to the bench. It's going to shape justice for a very, very long time. And I think people don't understand, or or they underestimate the impact that'll have.
yeah. Yeah, so now it's voting rights, it's civil rights. Now it's going to be women's reproductive
Right.
rights, right? Soon enough, I don't know what's going to happen. Are we just going to have
It's
riots?
going to be illegal to be black in America next week. Man, watch, man.
And I'm with you, and it's going to be it's incorrigible to see, but I think it's harder to imagine that this is the state of where and it's harder for my generation, right? They call us Gen Z. I don't really know what that means, but as far as I can tell, uh, we're in a bit of a pickle moving in as the next class of voters. Um, and so I kind of want to bring this back to a localized perspective and ask, do you think it's fair if young people like myself earn the right to vote at an earlier stage than 18, um, and therefore can translate into direct impact in our local communities?
Interesting.
Right? These are great questions. I know I made them myself.
'Should it be lower?
16, 17. Oakland vote. You know, Oakland youth vote.
Yeah.
Berkeley votes. And Maryland, I believe they did it as well. I think Oakland is specific to the school board. Um, but do you
So,
think?
so for me, I'm like, yes, hell yeah. But I'm trying to think what the cons are, and the opposition side is to it, right? I'm like, for me, I'm like, yes, I like that idea. I love it. I think it's appropriate.
Yeah,
Um, Especially from having a 16-year-old daughter and talking to them and just knowing their politics and knowing um, what they believe and how they see the world. I'm like, yeah, I love it. I'm trying to think of the cons to it, right? So the cons could be not enough life experience. Like, not true.
not
Uh,
true. In most cases, 16-year-olds are emancipated,
right.
understand the law, can drive in certain states. I mean,
So it's the con, not high school educated, but that shouldn't be a requirement. And so
and
you,
I
right,
I haven't even gotten to high school civics education, right? And the idea of that being expanded so that we not only learn about how civics works, how to actually vote. If you ask the average teenager, how do you vote? Not the importance of voting, but how do you vote? You'll probably be left with a blank face because most people don't understand the registration patterns, where you need to be, what precincts you need to go to. It's also why I always recommend folks to become poll workers, right? Because I think there's a certain synergy that works with civics education and earning that right to vote, right? You learn through practice. I mean, I'm sure law school was great, but it shit really hit the fan when you probably got your first case, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think
Yeah, and
no, I think I was thinking it doesn't exist anymore. But when prosecutors could direct file minors, charge them directly as adults and
right,
move them to court, I'm like, well, shit, if you can do that, then they should be able to vote, right? I
right.
mean,
And the best part is you won't truly understand the supposed disadvantages that the side will bring unless it's implemented, right? Unless we give it a shot at a large scale, we won't be sure if it can actually have the impact that you and I want or if it's actually negative, right? It needs to be tried. It needs to be um, analyzed afterwards. And that's kind of why we should all be voting rights. You said everybody should be a public defender. I think everybody should be a voting rights advocate because they're under attack. And so that's kind of my little spiel for the day. I do want to ask though your advice to my generation, Gen Z. Uh, what can we do to make an impact on voting, on elections, on policy, on law, and how do we reach certain communities that feel alienated, exhausted, and apathetic towards the political process?
so I'm going to take that question a different route
Okay.
based on our conversation a little while ago, okay? Because I think we can debate this one for a bit. Your interest and
Mhm.
your priority is voting, right? Yeah, I mean you're all about that. That's kind of probably if you're talking about one of the most important rights, maybe the most important right people have, right? Is for you, the right to vote.
Correct.
I might take it different. I might say it's the right to serve on a jury.
Interesting.
I might say that is the most important right because if we compare voting rights to the right to serve on a jury, are you compelled to serve? Are you forced to serve on a jury? Are you summoned to come and show up? If you don't come and show up, there's a warrant issued for your arrest, right? Are you summoned to vote? No, you have a choice with that. But the way we are set up in this nation, we have prioritized serving on a jury.
Hmm.
But people want to get out of jury service all the time.
Right. Yeah.
All the time. They don't want to do it. So, but think about how important it is. You can walk into a courtroom and have an immediate impact on someone's life right then and there. Right then and there. And we talk about diversity on juries, even in a diverse county like Alameda, our juries aren't that diverse. You're hard pressed to find more than one black person on a jury in Alameda County. There are many of jury trials in criminal cases where the client is black and there's not a single black person sitting in judgment of them. Okay, that has to change. So I would, for me personally, I prioritize that. I prioritize the right to serve as jurors. I prioritize diversity on juries, and it's the importance of it. Last year, everyone was out there protesting, right? We're all saying Black Lives Matter. We're saying the system is broken. We're saying we need criminal justice reform. We're saying all these things. They're saying there's systemic racism, but then when push comes to shove, we're not showing up in the courtrooms to change that with a single vote in a jury trial, right? And that's how we can have an impact. I mean,
Right.
boom, right there, immediate.
I just want to say the operative word there was a single vote on
Yes,
the juror, right? Within the jury, right? From what I understand, and you're the lawyer here, so I'm going to rely on you
sure.
for kind of accuracy. What I find most important about voting rights is that it is intrinsically connected to every other issue possibly imaginable, right? Voting. If I vote in my election for mayor's office, and I support a candidate who I know is going to help develop public infrastructure, my roads will be built. My public space will have a park. Like there will be things for me to do in my community. For instance, in a district attorney race like Pamela Price, who I've also had on this show, um, now I support a candidate, a viable candidate with a proven track records of civil rights, and I can understand that at the district attorney level, she will carry on those rights and she will ensure that everybody is treated equally as a district attorney. Right? I don't know if I can say that about the current district attorney, but I can say that about her. Right? So me voting in elections local and at a larger scale, right? If I don't vote in a federal election, if my candidate doesn't win or supposedly good candidate doesn't win, then the federal money that's going to help support my roads won't come in. So I do think that jury duty, right? And this is something, I have to convince my parents to go and do, right? They'll get their little postcard in the mail, is imperative but still connected to voting rights because your choice to vote for candidates, your choice to uphold a fair or unfair legal system in your district attorneys, your choice to vote for the board of supervisors that appointed you to public defenders is connected to your choice to being a juror and serving on a bench to help or save or to hurt somebody's life. It's all connected.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna agree with you there. 'Cause I think about some of the reforms that we've gotten done to increase diversity on juries would not have been done without having the proper elected officials to do
Right.
it. Right.
Elected officials is and it's something I recommend. There are campaigners like myself, there are average voters, but there are also people who I would think need to run for office because we as advocates, we can only influence a candidate or an elected official to a certain extent. We don't bear that choice. But you as an elected official, or you in a position of power, actually have that choice. It's almost tangible. You can almost feel it, and you can make a direct impact. So it's the one thing I recommend to everybody is if when in doubt, run for office, right? Get that exposure because if you win, the choices is on you, right? You have all the research, you have all the numbers, you have all the great buzzwords, you have all the great, policy objectives, but you can't do anything about it until you're in the room where decisions are made, right? Much like a courtroom, decisions are made. You have to show up. Um, so yeah, no, but good, interesting. You're the first person to counter me and do a counterfactual, and I have to argue my case. I don't have a choice. Oh God. Anyway, so yeah, no, back on. What is your advice to my generation? How would you go about saying this is the next generation that's going to have to deal with all this shit? What can we do about it?
I think a lot of things you're doing already is great. You talked about voting, mobilizing, messaging, um, being engaged. I think this generation right now is much more engaged than my generation was at the same age.
Right.
We were, I don't know, playing kickball or some shit. We weren't. We weren't as engaged, and people come down hard on social media. I think it has its flaws, but God, as far as a way of communicating and connecting and pushing out messaging, I think it's really, really valuable. And you're able to connect across lines pretty quickly, and you're able to mobilize a lot quicker than you were ever before. And just the information that's available to you um, about issues, it's stunning um, how fast you can communicate and mobilize. I think if I had to give advice to this generation, I think number one, be informed, number one, vote, and try to be proximate to
Mhm.
the issues, be close to them, issues you care about. I don't know if you want to be volunteering at an Alameda Center or Urban Peace Movement or some group like that, or even ACLU, but just being proximate. And then the final piece is not giving into fear, um, because fear is the biggest thing that has stoked division, that has stoked racism, that has stoked mass incarceration, and just being aware and not giving into that. Because I can almost feel um, the pendulum moving the other way right now, where people are becoming more fearful of crime, and the media is portraying things to happening a certain way, and I almost feel it happening right now, and people are going to begin to abandon the reforms that have been made and the focus on decarceration. That, well, maybe the other shit is going to work. Maybe we need to give police more funding. Maybe we need to
Right,
lock
maybe we need more officers on the ground.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
No, I understand. I see it. I've seen it for a while.
Mhm.
It's been the last couple months. It's been interesting to see, especially when the chief of police gives a CNN interview. It's hard to tell why that was motivated. But no, no, thank you so much.
But we just to go back and we think about just the amount of money that we already spend on policing, prosecution, probation, and caging people. And if we're able to redirect that funds to community solutions, we'd have a different place, right? We'd have a different place. The old solutions have never worked, and we got to stop relying on
Yeah, agreed. I concur, Your Honor. Uh, but in any case, how can viewers stay updated on what you do as a public defender? This is the only part where you can do self promotion and plug your social media, and whatnot. I'll link it all in the description.
Yeah, I guess if you want to stay updated on me, Twitter's the best way. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, mostly Twitter. I'm pretty active Republican on Twitter. There are other defenders who are pretty active too. That's probably our best mode right now. Hopefully, we'll have a newsletter out next couple months. It's on the to-do list and updating our website and so forth. But probably Twitter's the best way.
Okay, at Brendon Woods.
Brendon Woods PD. I think it's Brendon Woods PD. Yeah,
Okay,
Brendon
at
Woods
Brendon
PD.
Woods PD. Perfect. But no, no, thank you so much for coming and answering questions and then asking me questions about the questions that I asked you. No, I do appreciate it. The perspective, the insight. You came highly recommended, and I think you really delivered. So thank you so much. And next time, if you ever decide to run for another, or decide to run for an office, not public defender, then do come back on the show. Tell us a little bit more. But we support the work that you're doing currently.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
And yeah, no, thank you so much. Wish you the best.